I hope you're wrapped up warm tonight because it's getting very cold outside, but thankfully we have a Prime Minister who cares deeply about those who can't afford to put the heating on.
Dewsbury, winter before last, in the height of the energy prices going up, and spoke to an 84-year-old woman, worked all her life, obviously now a pensioner, and she told me that she doesn't get out of bed till midday because she didn't want to turn the heating on.
Yeah, it's awful.
And then when she did get out of bed, she had this sort of thermal jacket that she just wore all day long, so she didn't have to put the heating up very high. That's an awful position to put a pensioner in.
Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry, that was before the election when he was begging for your vote. Sorry, I forgot. Since then, of course, he's taken away the £300 winter fuel payment for all but the poorest of pensioners and condemned millions of OAPs to freeze this winter. Don't take my word for it either. When Labour were accusing the Tories of wanting to do the same thing when they were in government, they didn't, by the way, Labour's own research suggested up to 4,000 pensioners would die as a result. And damning new research today from Marie Curie shows more than 40,000 terminally ill pensioners have lost their winter fuel allowance thanks to this government. Energy costs can double for those with terminal illnesses. They need to constantly keep their homes warm to help relieve pain, to wash and dry clothes, and to charge and run life-saving medical devices. And separate research from Age UK today reveals 55% of pensioners will turn down the heating or reduce the hours they use it this winter. Around 1.2 million are also intending to reduce the number of hot meals they eat. Can you believe that in 2024? They are literally choosing to heat or eat. So what does the Prime Minister do? He shrugs it off.
The whole House is concerned about energy bills, which are actually lower this year than they were last year. The long-term way to deal with this is clean power by 2030 to make sure we drive those energy bills down on a permanent basis. And that's what we will do. On the winter fuel allowance, he knows very well what the government's position is, and I've rehearsed it, indeed, with him many times.
Let me remind you how much this widely hated Labour policy is earning Treasury coffers. £1.4 billion. Let me remind you what Labour is splashing other taxpayer cash on while our elderly freeze to death. £22 billion on a carbon capture programme that's hated by eco-zealots and climate sceptics alike. £14 billion in foreign aid. £14 billion in public sector pay rises to the likes of train drivers already earning up to £60,000 a year. And at least £1 billion a year housing asylum seekers. I never thought I'd see the day, and I suspect many pensioners didn't either, when those who have shed blood, sweat and tears for this country, decade after decade, were treated with such disdain and callousness by those meant to be protecting them.
Using the internet without a VPN is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. We want to help protect you. This video's sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the VPN to help keep you safe. Now you might be asking, what is a VPN? Well, a virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. This way it shields your digital life from the eyes of those that are looking to exploit your private information. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, such as at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even in your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Hackers that are connected to the same Wi-Fi network have the ability to steal your personal data with ease. T-Mobile reached a settlement this year with the US Federal Communications Commission after they suffered data breaches in 2021, 22 and 23. In 2023 alone, over 37 million customers' data was exposed. And it's not just hackers to be concerned about. Information can be censored. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news content that you love. Private Internet Access is available for all platforms: Windows, macOS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one Private Internet Access subscription to protect an unlimited number of devices at the same time. Plus, we've got a huge GB News discount. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get 83% off PIA. That is under £2 a month, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee. So head to piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster, Juditha De Silva. Good evening, panel. Thank you for your company. Welcome along. Adam Brooks, your thoughts on this, please. He spoke in Parliament today, the Prime Minister, and just, as I said, shrugged it off. Doesn't really care about the two damning surveys done today by Marie Curie or Age UK. Pensioners literally freezing to death this winter.
I can't believe, again, as you said there, that we have got a government that is putting the lives of our elderly at risk. These elderly have helped shape this country and put into this country over many decades. This country wouldn't be what it is today without those generations. Now, again, 4,000 could die, and that was their estimate in 2017, a Labour estimate. Now, prices have doubled since then, energy prices. So I'm predicting there could be a lot more. Now, this is a government that pre-election said that energy bills would come down and that they would look after pensioners. They've done the opposite. This is a Prime Minister that gets his specs paid for, his suits paid for. He gets the use of a £20 million penthouse for nothing. They are hypocrites and they are liars.
Juditha, your thoughts on that? It's a great point from Adam. Sir Keir Starmer's paid a six-figure salary. He gets freebies to the Arsenal, Taylor Swift concerts, the races, £2.5 specs, a wardrobe bought for his wife. All the while, British pensioners freezing in winter.
I mean, if we're going to unpack what politicians benefit from when they're in office, we need only just look at the very short distance to Boris Johnson. So all of them are pretty much a questionable set when it comes to politicians in general. But I think that's diversionary tactics. The thing is, on the face of it, the way the initiative is presented is that it's a multi-pronged approach, that while you're cutting fuel allowance here, you're going to drive down energy bills, you're going to raise pensions. It's actually means tested. You can apply for pension credit. But what I say is that even though you're trying to attack it in a holistic sense, so that where you lose here, you gain over there, is the money you're going to reap from this initiative worth the negative sentiment that's pretty much universal? I don't know. That's where I question the thinking and the logic behind
What do you think? Do you back this policy?
I don't think it's good. I disagree with it.
So you'd pull the plug on it if you were Prime Minister?
I would. But I understand the motivation behind. At the end of the day, these are all inherited problems. The over 20 billion black hole is an inherited problem. They only knew the true borders of it once they got into power.
Why are they doing it then? Are they doing it deliberately to stitch up the pensioners who are mostly, I guess,
No,
Tory voters?
It's a sensibility that the knock-on effect, if everyone from David Cameron to Tony Blair to Joe Public and Jane Public and myself said that you will only understand the ramifications of Brexit in years to come. That is the truth.
What's it got to do with Brexit?
It is because what you're trying to deal with is the loss of the economic dent that has been made that the UK has to make up for. And everyone's feeling a pain.
£14 billion in climate aid. That's 14 times what's going to be earned from
We
this
are
policy.
paying £5.4 billion for asylum seekers and asylum aid in this country. Those people do not deserve to get warm bedrooms, fed 3 times a day, free healthcare over our pensioners.
You can always question that there are certain things that money is not well advised to be spent on.
That is a disgrace.
But at the other side, tell me now that the big golden pot at the end of the rainbow of Brexit hasn't been delivered 8 years later. It is because it's a it's an economic dent that has been inherited since Brexit that everyone is still trying to deal with. But people want to avoid focusing on what they've inherited from that.
Our economic growth has tracked that of the EU since Brexit. That is true.
Growth of the economic, growth of the UK's economy doesn't.
There is, Ben, as you pointed out, there are choices to be made in government. You know, there is a certain fixed pot of money, and you need to decide which cohorts or which projects you're going to give it to. And they have picked, I think, remarkably, 2 battles that make fairly modest savings. Was it 1.4 billion on the fuel allowance, 500 million on the farmers' tax? 500 million. I mean, that's 2 billion in total, which in terms of total government spending is chump change. I would say this, that I think where we need to have a serious debate. We are no longer in the situation that applied a couple of generations ago, whereby if you were old, you were almost certainly poor. There are a lot of poor pensioners, but there are a lot of rich pensioners as well. I think it's about 1 in 4 pensioners are millionaires in terms of the value of their property. So I think we do need to redesign the system so that you get the help, probably less total money spent to the people who desperately need it. My parents don't. There's no need to give them the winter fuel allowance.
Somebody who lives in a house with a bit of equity because they bought it many decades ago and they grafted very hard to purchase it, aren't cash-rich millionaires.
No, they're not cash-rich,
also,
that's true.
You get people on this sofa in recent weeks saying, well, move out then, move house. That's not always easy for a 70, 80, 90-year-old person who's spent their entire life in that house. They have very deep sentimental values attached to the house.
No, I'm not suggesting...
Where are they going to go?
No, I'm not suggesting you should do it.
So they're not millionaires?
You can release the equity in your property.
That's a scam. Equity release is the biggest financial scam.
We've got to make that work, because if you have got £1 million property, I'm not saying sell it so you can pay your gas bills, but I am saying that is an asset that you can borrow against, and we need a proper market to allow that. And a good number of pensioners, as I say, I'm going to pick on my parents again, are pretty affluent, and it doesn't seem to me a good use of money to be sending them the winter fuel allowance. I would have wrapped the winter fuel allowance, I think, into the basic state pension. Then you're taxed on it, so those who've got a healthy income might actually be paying a 40% tax on it. Those who are reliant wholly on the state pension would not be paying any tax, or an absolutely tiny amount. But what Labour have completely screwed up is the execution of this policy. You were showing that clip of Keir Starmer just before the election. Suddenly, out of a clear blue sky, is a complete U-turn. This has not been thought through. It is not an efficient way of getting the money to the people who need it. And here's another thought to conjure with, not just the number of deaths we might see, but every ambulance call-out costs, what, 250 quid?
Yeah.
A night in hospital is about 400 quid. You might end up losing money because so many people need medical assistance.
Adam, you saw that clip of Keir Starmer talking before the election, you know, getting sentimental and synthetic about pensioners. So is he... What's happened? Is he a liar? Has he had to change position?
No, he's a blatant liar.
It's not a lie. It's being assessing that the landscape has changed and accepting it.
He's a blatant liar. They've lied on so many things. If they'd told the electorate they would do this to the farmers, if they told the electorate that they would do this to pensioners, they wouldn't have got in. That's a fact. We have now got a government that is so spiteful that even Labour voters are shocked and ashamed to have voted for that party.
How are you going to brand a U-turn as lying? If you assess the terrain and it has shifted, it is pragmatic for a politician to change policy to react to that.
£1.4 billion.
Indeed, I agree that I think it's a drop in the ocean, and based on the universal derision that it has been met with, it is something that you could feasibly forego. But the whole idea is that, like we've already heard, in order to fix the problem they have inherited, everyone's going to have to hurt a little bit.
Juditha.
If with one breath you say fix the problem, the process to fix the problem in an expedited fashion means everyone suffers to a certain degree. You can't say fix it but don't affect me.
There were better ways to raise money.
Can I just ask you, you keep mentioning and alluding to Brexit, but we had the best GDP figures out of the entire, I think it was the entire world, at least the G7 in the first 6 months of this year. The best in decades. Germany was in recession last year. We weren't. We've been growing, you know, at an anemic pace, but still growing. Germany.
The gains that the EU bloc have made would never have been made based on the domination the UK had pre-Brexit. That is just a fact.
So why was Germany in recession last year?
We know that it's a multitude of issues. There are always going to be isolated deviations, which always happens in finance. But I'm saying that no one can sell to me. If you can sit there and say what you were sold, like get Brexit on, what you were sold at the beginning of Brexit, because everyone was on there. That is the essence of the whole thing. If you're sold something and you believed in it and voted for it, has it been delivered? With one breath, if you condemn Keir Starmer for not delivering on things he promises, then you have that purist approach to people delivering on what they offer, what they've said you are going to get.
Whether Brexit works or not, that's a separate conversation.
And that's not the problem.
You are attributing a political decision to save £1.4 billion on a vote that took place nearly a decade ago.
I already said that I don't back that. I'm saying that the general ethos of this Labour government seems to be everyone has to hurt to contribute to the solution.
Well, hang on. The real problem that a government of any stripe faces has nothing to do with Brexit. It's that the British government has been overspending for nearly a quarter of a century. You have to go back to 2001 to the last balanced budget, 15 years before the Brexit referendum. Government has spent too much, and we need a serious debate about how we're going to cut total government spending in a sensible fashion.
And it started with Gordon Brown and the NHS financial situation that he's left us, and we're still paying for now.
The PIF investments,
yes,
private hospitals, yeah, and they're doing it again. BlackRock sitting down in Downing Street. That's exactly what they're doing again. They're going to be selling off swathes, or well, getting investment from private sectors, Vanguard, BlackRock, and so on and so on.
Blair and Brown, they started the Benefit Britain. Where you could just rely on benefits. They changed this country for the worse.
Those private investment fund hospitals were also a scam. If you want to talk about scams tonight, release private investment fund hospitals. Anyway, thank you, panel. Mark, Adam, Jadisa.